What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video, and I want to give my quick thoughts on the first two episodes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I have seen WandaVision, and I've already had my little review of the Snyder Cut, and so I want to keep it brief, and I want to really talk about the potential this show has, as every new show has. And honestly, why I liked episode 2 more than episode 1, and why the earlier episodes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier are way better than the earlier episodes of WandaVision. And although I do enjoy WandaVision, I will explain my entire view on the TV show when I get the chance to. For now, since I already have seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, why not do a video on it? Now, I have to talk about episode 1, since that's where the show starts. And episode 1, I think you could talk about in spoilerish detail. The show is dependent on too many Easter eggs, but the stuff that they do bring from the comics is really great. I don't really want to get into too much spoilers for episode 2 since it's relatively new, and at the time of making this video, it literally came out an hour ago. So I don't really want to touch too much on episode 2, but I will touch about the stuff that I found interesting about episode 2 without trying to get into spoilers. Now, episode 1 really does give Sam and Bucky their own time to grow. We know where they are at when it is post Endgame. We see Sam having his issues with, being kind of poor because he's been gone for 5 years and having to help his sister provide for his family. On top of that, the guilt and pressure he has of continuing Cap and Steve's legacy. You also have the B plot of Bucky and him trying to make amends with all the people that he has wronged in his life as the Winter Soldier, which I also find very interesting. On top of that, this episode really highlights one line from Civil War that makes it have a deeper meaning. When Iron Man asks the Winter Soldier Bucky when he's fighting him, "Do you remember them?" Bucky says, "Of course," and we get to see that in nightmares for Bucky. We see him relive his old Winter Soldier days when he used to work for Hydra, and I think that is relatively interesting. And on top of all that, on top of all the interesting themes and narratives that the show throws in there, it also gives a sense of soldiers coming from war and having nothing. I mean, think about it. Sam and Bucky literally saved the entire universe from Thanos, or at least helped with that process. And here, Sam can't even afford to keep a boat. And Bucky still has PTSD from his past experiences. And they're not completely honored as heroes, not as much as Tony Stark, which is something that in earlier scripts of WandaVision wanted to focus. Why is it only Tony that gets commemorated? What about the others? And although that didn't work for that show, I think it works better for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And the reason being is simply because that is what the show's about. For some time now, we always wanted a show that focused on the world post-blip or has some involvement with how the blip has impacted the MCU. And we finally found that show with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Let's think about it. Spider-Man Far From Home, which I have my own things with, is just a movie. It doesn't have enough time to really flesh out the world post-snap, on top of what it's doing with Mysterio and all the twists and turns it has and all the other stuff that's happening in Far From Home. And WandaVision was pretty inclusive in Westview. It was only focused on Westview, in Wanda's bubble, and it only took place 3 weeks after Endgame. But here, a considerate amount of time has passed after Endgame, and we're still seeing the world still being impacted because, to be frank, bringing back half of the universe is good in intention, but at the same time, it also shows how people will react to people coming back and how the world tries to readjust into normal. it's kind of like the pandemic, scarily enough, where it's just people trying to go back to normality as much as possible. And the amount of time that's taking to the point where it's 6 months. Oh, sorry. It's 6 months after Avengers Endgame, and the characters are still trying to adjust. And I find that to be really interesting. And although I really did enjoy episode 1, even with that War Machine cameo, let's not elude what the show's about. It's not about, to an extent, it's not completely about the effects of the blip in the MCU, and it's not primarily focused on Bucky's PTSD or Sam being broke. It is about the legacy of Captain America, which is ultimately what this show comes down to because it is indeed a spin off of the Captain America trilogy. Falcon and the Winter Soldier does something so interesting, and it's honestly so genius when you think about it. It does such a simple move of adding so many characters that we think should already be Captain America. We all know people think Bucky should have been Captain America. We know people think Sam should have been Captain America, but now it adds new players into the mix, people that can qualify to be Captain America, and that goes no further than U.S. Agent, who for now is being titled the new Captain America until he takes the title of U.S. Agent. I think this is interesting because they don't, in episode 2, they don't make John Walker the bad guy. He's simply trying to do his best, and just like Sam, feels the pressure of continuing the legacy of Steve Rogers. But there is a difference. He didn't personally know Steve Rogers, and this obviously creates conflict in episode 2 between Falcon and Bucky and John Walker and his friend, who I unfortunately forgot his name, but it does create tension between those teams, and it creates a sense of animosity between each other. Well, primarily for Bucky and John, because Bucky knew Steve first things first, and he's knew Steve the longest. So it makes sense why he's visibly upset that Sam would give away the shield to the Smithsonian, who in turn gave it to the government and backstabbed Sam. Sam's intentions were good, but the government's were not. And now he's paying for the price. If there's anything that the Captain America trilogy has been teaching us, is that the government's corrupted. And I'm pretty sure because this is a spinoff, and because of what the government just did with the whole Captain America fiasco, I think this will continue the themes of the government being corrupted in different ways. Also, different conflicts and ideologies. Without getting into a big spoilers, Bucky did keep a secret about something that is very big and close to Steve, away from Steve, and Steve will probably never know this. I'm not really going to touch onto it because it's a pretty big spoiler, and if you're a fan of the Marvel Comics, it's such a unique twist on one of their original characters that I'm not really going to give away. On top of that, you also have the thing about race, and that there's some racial issues that are starting to rise up. We saw hints of this with the bank and the Smithsonian thing in episode 1, but we really got to see that in effect in episode 2 when the police come over because they see Sam visibly angry at Bucky over that spoiler, that secret that Bucky kept from Steve. And he has every right to be angry because this is a pretty big thing that he should have told Steve. And the police come over and are ready to just arrest Sam until they realize that he's the Falcon. And then they apologize. It kind of shows a little bit of something. And although it's not 100% accurate and we don't have to completely go in depth about what all that means, it is showing that Marvel is willing to take a risk to go into these issues that honestly does have an impact on our real world. And I'm sad to say even does with comic fans about how they feel about certain characters taking up mantles of others. Overall, I find this show interesting. It's definitely not as I need to obsessively watch this every week like WandaVision was just to know what was happening or how invested you were. But what it lacks for in genuine excitement to watch what happens next, it gives us with actual narrative story. A story that seems well constructed and a story that seems very tight. I didn't even get into the Flag Smashers, and to be fair, we didn't get too much of them in these past two episodes, but I'm pretty sure we will. There's also a lot of stuff that I really did not get into because I really did not really want to spoil this show. But overall, I really liked episode 1, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10. And I really liked episode 2, which I'll give it 8 out of 10. I'm really liking this show, and I can't wait to see how everything turns out in its finale. The two stingers it left for its episodes are interesting, and they pick up off of each other. I'm invested to see what happens next with Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I'm probably not going to do a check-in every week. Most likely when the show is done airing on Disney Plus, I will ultimately do my final review of the show and how I feel about it. But until then, I have been enjoying the earlier episodes. And don't worry, I'll get to talking about WandaVision soon. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.